Good morning, everybody, and welcome to today's episode of Market Check, brought to you by BB. There is no second best daily YouTube live stream to talk about markets. Happy Monday, guys. Thank you for spending the first day of your week with us. As always, we are going to do our best to tackle markets for you ahead of this week, right? And we do have quite a few macro catalysts. I'm sure we'll have quite a few headlines in between as well. If the last few if the last few weeks are any indication, what's most important ultimately is how the market moves around it. But welcome, guys. I'm Tommy. You also know me as Snorlax. I'm joined by Max and, of course, unbothered and moisturized today, Chef Jackus. Welcome, guys. I hope we all had a great weekend. I think a lot of people probably had a better weekend than others. You know, if you are an Eagles fan, for example, congratulations to you. If you are a Chiefs fan, maybe not quite as much happy feelings today, but at least the coins are green. At least the coins are green. And of course, guys, we're going to talk about where we think things are going to trade throughout the week, as well as always, you know, where we think they can trade over the next few months, maybe even longer time horizons than that, guys. But before we can do that, before we can start talking about Bitcoin, ETH, and I'm looking at my watch list, quite a few green altcoins. So if you do have suggestions, by the way, throw those in the chat. We're not going to look at the bottom of the barrel shit coins that you guys might have, but we're going to do our best to to survey the crypto market and see where the points of maximum opportunity are. But before we can do that, guys, I need you to smash that like button. Maybe it's a celebratory like button smash. Maybe it's a smash out of frustration. Either way, you guys know how far that goes for our channel. And of course, we're all very appreciative when you do. But that's enough of that. Let's get in the nitty gritty of the show. Because, you know, that's what's most important. How is the market going to move this week? I believe we have I think Powell's speaking later this week. I think we have a CPI print later this week. I think we've got some job data later this week. I mean, hopefully things that end up being run of the mill, and we let the market just kind of trade how the market's going to trade at the end of the day, which to start the week, Bitcoin is green. I think it traded all the way into mid 98Ks today. ETH is green, of course. And I look at some of these altcoins that were very beaten down over the last few weeks, and they are green today as well. So I think, as we always say, I mean, Monday tends to be a bit of an impulsive day for the week, sets the range for the next few trading days. You have Tuesday, mean reversion, and then, of course, you get that true directionality more so on Wednesday and Thursday. And how fitting that is, right, to be getting that true directionality later in the week when we have some of our favorite catalyst for market, which happens to be macro data. I'm being sarcastic, of course, but it probably will be pretty important to the price action as far as this week goes. Equity markets are pretty much quiet today, right? The S&P up about 0.5%, as volatility down 2.5%. So not too much to write home about in legacy land. That's perfectly fine with me. I'm cool talking about the coins for a majority of the show, if that's going to be where most of the volatility is present, guys. But I'd love to know what we're thinking about the market. Maybe any thoughts on you don't have to give me your thoughts on the Super Bowl, but maybe you tell me what you did for a Super Bowl party. I don't know. Let's start the show off on a lighthearted note before we get too deep into the coins, guys. But I'd love to know, like I said, how you're viewing the markets, how your weekends were, and anything else that you feel particularly inclined to share ahead of a week where I guess we do have apparently lots of macro data.
Hello. Happy Monday, guys. Happy to be here. It's been kind of a long weekend, honestly. My son is sick. He's still sick, getting better, but he's sick. Now my wife is really sick, so they're sick together. Somehow I'm not sick yet, but if I suddenly don't show up for like a week, I got what they got. It's bad. Fevers, coughing, the whole thing. You know, I've been sleeping on the couch. Let's put it that way. Taking a lot of vitamins. So it's been a rough few days at my house, but, you know, everybody's getting better. At least, you know, the silver lining is like, even though everybody's sick and like it's tough, you know, at least like my altcoins are way up. So like I have that to lean on, right? all that wealth and prosperity. I can't do anything but laugh about it. But yeah, guys, look, I mean, ETH BTC is ripping face. See, I drew an arrow. You can see the candle, like absolutely just, it's on a tear right now, man. I mean, look at the green candle. You can't make this up, man. You can't make it up. Look at that thing. Green, not red. You love to see that after just being down like, 1,000,000% in 3 years. That we're so back, right? There's like a meme of like the guy holding up the smallest little green candle, and that's what we have here on ETH BTC. Let's see here. I don't know. I mean, I'm a little like indifferent on Bitcoin. It's just chopping. I want to lean towards this breaking to the upside. I really do. Because I don't look at this structure. Come on, let's load. I don't look at this structure here and think that this looks too bad. Generally, I don't. It's just kind of chopping within this, multi-month value region. So I don't think there's a ton of signal in looking at this, but I would say I'm not really looking at this fearful of like some nuke down here right now. I could see us taking some stabs lower, sweeping the yearly, maybe even taking out this low. We'll see what happens. I feel like it'd be off of another like news-driven catalyst, probably something bullish like, it's either some Saudi sheik who's worth $2 quadrillion buying Bitcoin, which of course would be bearish, or, perhaps the US actually buying Bitcoin. Of course, that would be bearish as well. I can't explain why, but that would be extremely bearish. Anybody buying Bitcoin in size or crypto altcoins is actually a bearish thing. So you would naturally think like, oh, that would be bullish. No. That's how things used to be. Now, if it's bullish, it's actually bearish. And if it's bearish, it's actually over and it's even more bearish. So just kind of keep that in mind, that I would probably look for a drop like this if the US starts buying Bitcoin. Or even like an announcement of, the world's largest pension fund buying Bitcoin. Like I would think that would send us lower as well. So just kind of keep in mind, like look out for all of the best possible news and then prospect Bitcoin dipping down here off of that news, right? Just naturally, like I wouldn't expect you to understand, and I certainly can't explain it to you, but you have to understand that, that's the regime that we are in. So I'd be looking for something like that. But all of that amazing news aside, I really think there's nothing but noise coming out of this, because you look at I mean, we're back, it's over. We're back, it's over. We're back. It's just there's nothing going on here. I think for the time being, it's probably going to serve most people best to just try to play the extremes, right? Bid value area low, sell value area high, or hold your high conviction bags down here. Look for hedges or de-risk if you think the cycle's over up top here. But we're just moving sideways, right? We're kind of in this like low volatility reaccumulation. Typically after you get a big shakeout like that, you do unfortunately get like the death of volatility. So I don't know, just kind of looking for momentum to kind of curl back up. Maybe it's going to take a little bit longer, but yeah, that's kind of it, man. I guess we're just chopping again. I feel like we go through little periods of like, we get 3 or 4 weeks of awesome, and then we go through like 9 months of I want to kill myself kind of price action.
That's literally what's been going on for the past 2 years.
And I think I've come to realize that I actually hate crypto, and I think I should have started trading equities instead. Like, what was I thinking? Like, why did I want my own market? Like, stocks.
You know why,
Marx?
Manipulated. You know why? Because it was an emerging industry.
No, there's no such thing. Zero. Okay. Here's the thing: is stocks only go up, man. Like it's not even a meme. It's the most manipulated scam, good scam, in the history of the world. Like it's the best thing ever. It goes down, they print money. It goes down, they lower interest rates. It goes down. It's think about this. It's the only thing in the world where everybody's collective interests are perfectly aligned. Like the elites, the politicians, the working class, everybody, right? Like, it is the one thing that literally cannot fail, and everybody's interests are perfectly aligned. And I thought to myself, you know what? That's not good enough for me. I need an emerging asset class that is not aligned with their interests at all. And they're going to come in late to the game and manipulate it and ruin it. So yeah, it was my own fault for trying to be cute. I chose the wrong asset class. I thought that stocks were like, why didn't I just buy Nvidia and Meta and Google and Apple like all of my parents and their friends? Why didn't I do that? I don't get it. I had a vision. I had an idea, but instead I get 3 weeks of yay and then 9 months of this is fucking awful. Rinse, repeat, right? Rinse, repeat.
Are you having fun yet?
No.
How is our little investor doing?
What do you think the stock market traded in the first 20 years of its existence?
What year are you pegging it existing in? Like late 1800s?
I don't know. When did the stock market become a thing?
Well,
I think it's been a thing for like centuries, but
Well,
on
markets
TradingView,
yeah.
it only goes back until like 1880.
That's crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, well, there's been lots of train stocks, back in 19th century, actually.
Yeah.
But obviously, the stock market began probably way earlier than that in different countries. But in
And
US,
the NASDAQ didn't really, I don't think, start, technically speaking, until like mid 80s.
That's true.
Yeah.
the stock
Because-
market as we know it hasn't existed that long. There has been a stock market for a long time, but
Yeah,
I'm talking about the QE bonanza that it's come
that's
to
true.
be. I'm not talking about back in the day buying railroad penny stocks,
Literally. Like I remember I read few books from people who lived back then, and it's quite amusing to see that they really didn't feel much different from the way we feel nowadays about crypto, about stocks. They literally thought like not like them, like they saw the value in few stocks, and so, but like the general public literally saw that stocks are scam. And it's like, if you look at it from
And they were right.
if you look at it from today's perspective, it's like it makes no sense, right? If you are investing in stocks, you are this sophisticated gentleman. But back then,
Is that how they view us right now, Jack? If you're investing in crypto, you're a sophisticated gentleman?
no, that's in like 50 years maybe.
Nah.
But nowadays, it's all a
They
scam.
think we're drug addicts, man.
Yeah.
They think we're literally like a bunch of weirdos living under bridges,
Literally.
living in like tent villages.
But in 20 years, look at these sophisticated gentlemen investing in crypto back in the day.
Sophisticated gentlemen. I mean, I hope you're right, man. I hope you're right.
I mean, it's always
I
been
really-
like that. So
I feel like we
sideways.
low key got one of the like warning signs of the future for crypto's next utility, which I've always said is going to be non-sovereign storage as a value. We had some commentary about U.S. Treasuries over the weekend that I felt was probably a big deal on a higher time frame. If the U.S. government is saying that there is fraud within U.S. Treasuries, potentially to the point where we might not pay back some debt, right? That's kind of like a soft default almost. It's not a default, but it's like a default. And I think eventually capital is going to want to leave equities of a place like the United States and go to a place like crypto. So maybe I do think, in a few decades, we probably will be looked at as sophisticated gentlemen. But right now we're crazy degens.
It's pain until then. and that's fine.
Louis, how are you?
What's up, guys?
Welcome back.
I feel like I forgot what your
Thank
face
you.
looked like.
I know it's been a minute. I've been itching to get back. It's been, man. It just like God forbid you try to take a nice vacation, right?
There's a hidden alpha strategy, guys.
There really is.
It's crazy. It's insane.
Listen, you can be mastering market structure or moving averages or SMC, like every single day for years. But there is not a better strategy than BB team traveling. Whenever you see someone travel, just slide that leverage to the right and open up a short.
It's
100%.
true. And
It's
literally
actually
the night-
never missed, I don't think.
I don't think it's missed once.
At the very least, there's a scalp there. Like even if it's not a swing short, it's at least a scalp short.
I'm just
Yeah.
happy it wasn't me this time. It was Louis' fault. So if you have a problem, call Louis, not me.
Yeah.
This was Louis' fault. I didn't travel. I was home being a good boy. Louis, bad boy. He decided to travel.
Sadly, this is something that's happened to me even before being with BB. I remember I was talking on Discord this morning, the COVID crash when we were like when Bitcoin was like just cascaded to like 4 or 5K. I was traveling. I was traveling. So it just is what it is. What are you going to do? I was a buyer though. I was a buyer, and that worked out great. So
Max crashing out similarly to Kanye West.
what?
What?
Should I start tweeting like Kanye and just going crazy?
Probably not.
Yeah, probably not.
That
Well,
would-
if it makes the market to go vertical, might be worse.
All right, I would do it. If it
Maybe they're
means
just
we're gonna
waiting on
pump,
you,
I would
Max.
do it.
They're just waiting for you to capitulate, and then like, okay, we can go now. So I'm gonna have to fake them out.
The unfortunate thing for them is that my stop loss is at 0. So it's like I'll literally just sit here all day. I will refuse to sell. I'm just gonna sit here. You can't shake me out because I don't have any leverage and I refuse to sell. So come and get me, I guess. Like literally you'd have to send everything to 0. I'm not even kidding. Like
You know
the
what I'm-
iron
you
grip
know what
that
I'm
I have
afraid,
on my
Max?
bags, no one even comes close to what I have, man. Like people
Max.
think they can do it, they can't do it. Me,
I'm
I
af-
actually do it. My
I'm
stop
afraid-
loss is 0.
I'm afraid the market makers are watching and they just said challenge accepted. We're
So
gonna
we can
liquidate
make
the
it to 0.
exchange, we're gonna hack the wallets, whatever is needed.
Yeah. I mean, not actually, but there's some truth to it. Like it would have to take something absolutely cataclysmic to shake me out. I can stay somewhat sane longer than the market remains irrational. I said somewhat sane.
Do you guys remember Tezos?
Yes.
The East killer?
Yeah. How's that doing, by the way?
I don't know. The candles are too thin and small right now.
put it in log mode. You could see it then.
Who was Tezo sponsoring at one point? It was like a big
Manchester
was it
United, and they still are. And ever since they started doing that, Manchester United been on a downward spiral.
Man. Well, I remember Luna was still technically sponsoring some baseball team. I can't remember who it was. Even like a year after they blew up, because they bought the rights, I think, for like 4 or 5 years.
Oh my god! And I bet you that the Luna team was waiting for them to take it down just so that they can sue them. They're like, please do it. Finally, some liquidity.
Like I made my money the old-fashioned way, suing a soccer club.
You wouldn't get it.
Like
You wouldn't get it. Providing shareholder value the old-fashioned way.
let's talk about ETH.
Do we have to?
Do we have
We don't
to?
have
Why?
to, but
Why?
we probably should.
I still think we could get a move up to like more or less 3K. It wouldn't surprise me. And the room fell silent.
No, I agree. I'm looking for, 28.5, 2,900, 3K. Like I could see a move there. And then watching the reaction and how price reacts in that area, I think is really important. Whether it's a rejection, whether it's a reclaim of that level remains to be seen. So I think that's the biggest level right now for ETH is, let's just call it 3K. I think that's a big level. And I think we could see some relief up into there, or maybe just fill some wick to the downside first and then go for it. But locally, I think what's the level here that I had marked? 25. As long as we're above 2,500 locally, right? I think we're okay. I think we see a push up. You start to lose 2,500, you start getting into that camp where you're going to start filling some wick to the downside, which it is a massive wick. So buyers were there to buy up the ETH on that move. Whether or not we shoot up from here or not remains to be seen. A lot of the times you fill those wicks at least 75, 50% of the way. So whether it's up, then maybe down, or down and up, we will see. Jackus was saying this morning that probably prefer if it just filled some wick now and then went versus bouncing and then coming all the way back down. So we will see. But we'll see.
One thing I'm just not liking is this Tezos fractal on the BTC pairs. And I think what needs to happen, because we were discussing this with Louis earlier today, that it basically lost this support. And so what I think needs to happen for it to recover is go into a bottoming range. And then hopefully it breaks to the upside and sustains it. And this doesn't play out. What do you guys think? Do you think this is a chance to V-shape recover?
I don't think it. I don't know. I mean, I was saying in the Discord last night, I think I don't know if I've been saying I don't think ETH BTC will make new highs this cycle, but that doesn't mean that I think it makes sense to just be blindly fudding ETH USD, because a lot of people are wanting to do that right now. And I think if you're going to ask me the question, do I really think that by the time ETH USD tops this cycle, do I think that it's not going to be at a higher ratio on the ETH BTC pair? I would say that's probably like not a very high probability bet, just given where ETH BTC is trading. So I do think that we will bounce back towards that 0.05, 0.06 level at some point over the next probably year or so. But in general, I think this is probably in a downtrend until fundamentals change, right? I mean, this is something I talked about last week on X. I think that the bottom on ETH BTC isn't really going to have much to do with technicals, because if it did, we probably would have already bottomed. Yeah, I think it's fundamentally based. How does ETH compare to Bitcoin as a storage of value? A friend actually, and I haven't really viewed the ETH BTC pair in this way, but a friend thinks that I think highly of, that the ETH BTC relationship will trade very closely now to the historical ratio of like silver versus gold.
I like that comparison, or like saying that the chart doesn't have really much to do with TA levels, because I think that indeed we would have bounced long ago. Like it had all it needed, to be honest, to run already. And it's really fundamental shift to some degree, probably. I always think of what Max was saying, like out of all things that could have happened this cycle to ruin it for me, I did not expect ETH to be the one to ruin it.
No, I did not. I really think ETH is going to come back in a big way, man. I don't care what people are saying to me. This is the level of FUD and disrespect and bearish confidence that people are having right now. only ends one way, and it's with punishment. I'm not even going to call them out. I think I told Tommy who it was because I had to share with someone immediately, but someone that I haven't talked to DMs me on Twitter.
I
Haven't
hate that
talked
when
to
that
him since
happens.
December of 2023
Oh
and
my God.
basically told me that I should just like wave the white flag and just be like, ETH is dead. Everything on ETH is going to zero. Like a sincere message. Like they reached out and they were like concerned for me. They're like you need to basically be like, it's over for ETH, you know? I don't talk to this person, right? Like I don't know this person. But is Tommy super frozen or am I frozen? I can't figure out what's going on. Can you guys
No,
hear me?
it's just Tommy thinks. He's back.
Okay. I was like, I'm not gonna keep talking if no one can hear me. I didn't know if it was on my end or his. But man, it's getting completely out of control. Like the sentiment on ETH right now, it is getting completely out of control. Like, here's the thing that I said this morning to our community. Save all your fundamentals, save everything, man. Like, keep all of your logic on why there's better L1s. Table that for a minute, okay? Because none of that shit matters in markets. Why did Carvana pump 10x off the lows when it was in bankruptcy? It's all positioning based, right? Save your fundamentals, put it on the table. We'll come back later. Okay. There is one side of this trade that is extremely crowded. Is it the bear side or is it the bull side? Everybody is super bared up to the gills on ETH. Everybody, every fund, every firm on Wall Street, every CT analyst, everybody. We've got a record number of Ethereum shorts. Record, not even close. There is no second. So there is one side of this trade that is crowded. What typically happens when we get a really crowded trade? Either a huge bubble or a huge FUD campaign with positioning that basically aligns with the FUD. There's a huge unwind, either up or down. There is a very crowded trade here. And I'm telling you, these bears are going to get carted out in a big way, even if it's for a 30 or 45-day short squeeze. It can be that short-lived. The sentiment is completely egregious. The disrespect is egregious. The positioning is disrespectful at this point. These ETH bears are going to end up eating their own words at some point. And I'm not going to sit here and try to explain to you why ETH is ultrasound money and it's going to be some amazing revolution over the next 50 years. I don't give a shit about any of that. I'm talking about trading. Do I look like a guy that's going to pack a 15-year bag of spot ETH? Hell no. That's not what I'm doing here. I'm trying to place a trade. So if you think right now that somehow all of these shorts are not about to get obliterated at some point this year, I think there's a really, really low probability of that happening. I think there's a really, really low probability of these shorts not getting rinsed at some point this year. It's a crowded trade.
Can I put out like a super tinfoil hat theory that I've been thinking about over the last few weeks?
Please.
Nobody has to confirm or deny it. I don't even know if I believe it myself. I would not say that this is like something that I'm leaning is more likely than not, but I've been considering it because, I mean, we look at ETH, it is statistically speaking the most shorted that it's ever been in history. And I don't think that is strictly because of basis trade positioning and TradFi. I think that's cope. I think a lot of it does have to do with ETH BTC and this pairing. You know, people want to stay Bitcoin while being delta neutral. I can't really blame those people. But here's my theory. What if the Ethereum Foundation and Vitalik are suppressing the ETH price to try and flush out these bad actors that have done nothing but Ponzify the chain for like 2 or 3 years consecutively? Because I say this because Vitalik basically wrote a mini thread thesis on, you know, how ETH mainnet had basically become the, how do you say it, the Ouroboros, the Ouroboros, right? The snake eating its own tail. And when you look at DeFi, I think a lot of their concerns are valid. But I was just thinking to myself, like, how funny would it be if they're actually suppressing price to flush these guys out before ETH eventually goes higher, right? And that's not cope, because I'm not necessarily an ETH bull here. It's just kind of something that I've been thinking about over the last like week. How crazy of a scenario would that be? I mean, talk about how much ETH the ETH Foundation and Vitalik actually have. I would not be surprised if Vitalik has a massive short position on ETH right now.
Yeah. Well, one for sure. I mean, for sure, and it's something I've been also saying. The ETH Foundation selling has been very systematic, I feel, and I think it's been very calculated. So whatever for whatever reason it is, like what you just said is a great example as to why. I'm more in the camp where I think it is more linked to TradFi, ETH ETF, and big players being able to fill their bags at good prices, similar to what we saw with Bitcoin after that launch. But regardless, I think that the ETH Foundation, the way they've been selling, the amount they've been selling, and how systematic it's definitely raised, some thoughts for me as well. Like, okay, like I think this is very calculated. There's definitely a reason why they're doing it. What it is, we don't know. But it's definitely been happening. And like, I don't think that's tinfoil hat at all. I think that's just big players moving the market like they always do in a way. Right. So I would agree, Tommy.
Full PvP from an unlikely
Tommy,
source.
why would they care? Right.
I don't know that the ETH Foundation cares, but I do think Vitalik cares. I mean, when he wrote that thread on X, I don't know. I'd have to find it, honestly. I don't know where it is at this point. He wrote it in like July or August. But no, I think Vitalik does believe in ETH's future, but he definitely has said before he doesn't think that really anything productive is being built on Ethereum.
Oh no.
Oh no.
Tommy being Tommy.
Vitalik cut him off.
Basically, he just didn't want to talk bad about ETH.
Yeah, I mean, I've talked about it before too, where what makes most sense to me, which is also tinfoil hat, and I don't base my trading or my decision making in the markets off this, but what makes sense to me is, ETH got the ETF, BlackRock, I'm sure there had to have been talks, right? I don't think they would have ever listed an ETH ETF if they didn't have sit down discussions with Vitalik and the ETH Foundation. Sorry if you guys hear background noise, but and I think in those talks there was probably some discussion of, we're going to do this, right? We'll list the ETF, right? You'll get your ETH ETF, it'll be spot, but us and our guys, we want X, Y, and Z price, and we have to do whatever we can to get to that price and trap as much retail as possible to get that price. Because big institutions, big banks, big money, whatever you want to call it, they do not buy high. They are not going to buy high, right? They're not going to buy your bags that it's up 10x or 2x or 3x. They're going to make you sell, capitulate, and they'll buy your panic selling. That's how they are. They're predatory, right? Don't get it twisted. Like, everyone wanted institutions in our market. Well, guess what? They're here, and these are the games they play. This is how they play, and they have the money to do it. They have the size. So that was kind of my mindset and that's something I've been brewing in my head as well. Kind of a scenario I've been seeing. Whether it's right or wrong, I don't know. Does it matter to me and my decision making? Absolutely not. But it's just a thought process.
Tommy, don't you think that would be arguably super illegal?
It is.
Vitalik had a net short position.
No, I do think that would be very illegal, but I also don't think that would really, how are they going to prove that?
I don't know. I mean, to actually suppress the market, I mean, you'd have to have like hundreds of millions in collateral. I imagine you're going to be KYC'd on whatever platform you're using,
Yeah, I don't know. I don't quite know how it would work. This is just kind of something I thought about last week. Like, how funny would it be if the reason ETH's price was suppressed was because of Vitalik and the ETH Foundation?
I mean, he can be
Especially,
suppressing it without actually shorting it. He can suppress it just by doing a horseshit job. Like,
I mean, you can make ETH go down by sending it sideways. What do I mean by that? Well, if you think that ETH is a snake eating its own tail as far as DeFi, then if ETH is just going sideways, then the probability that it's eventually going to go down continues to increase as time goes on. So I could see something like that occurring. But again, it's a very tinfoil hat theory. I don't want to like lean or lend too much credence to it. It's just kind of something I thought about. I do think eventually ETH will move higher. Do I think it moves lower first? Yes, I do.
there it is. Big Louie, since it was single-handedly your fault that the market nuked because you were traveling, I would love to get some thoughts from you on how you plan to fix it since you caused this.
Okay. Let me
Okay.
if you wish. All right, let me
Go
let's
between
do
legs.
this.
Okay.
Are you guys getting background from me or no? I don't know. I'm in a new
A little, but okay.
it's not
You know, there's
horrible.
a setting here. Like, I don't know if you have yours on or not.
It's on. It's all
Okay.
on.
Yeah, you sound
but-
fine.
Yeah,
Okay.
you sound pretty crisp today, Louis. I gotta say.
I'm in a new room. I'm in everything, but my son is downstairs and he is teething, so he's just whining and stuff. So I don't know if you guys heard that or not, but if not, that's great.
No, I didn't hear anything.
All right, good. All right, so first of all, you were talking about sentiment, right, Max? Talking about sentiment, Bitcoin sentiment, BTC maxis taking their victory lap, trying to, shit on ETH and make us wave the white flag as they want us to. And I would say, the Bitcoin, sentiment being extremely bullish, right? And the ETH sentiment being extremely bearish, right? Is seen on the chart, right? So what do I mean by that is this is Bitcoin dominance, right? And what we're looking at, this is a weekly chart for Bitcoin dominance, right? So what we just saw over the last week or two is not something we haven't seen before, right? This is not something we haven't seen before. Like, look back to the 2020, 2021 cycle, right? Bitcoin dominance went on a ripper, put in a high. Most of the market thought Bitcoin dominance was top, started to roll over, looked like it was going to tank, right? And what did it do, right? Leading into, the end of 2020, going into the beginning of 2021, it ripped back up, ran the high, put in a weekly doji reversal candle right here, high wick, ran this high, and then proceeded to put in its cycle top, right? And what are we looking at now, right? So this is crazy, right? Definitely weird, right? But Bitcoin dominance has been grinding higher for years now. We put in a high, right? This looked like a good spot for it to be a high. If you're looking at the technicals, right? We peaked above a big level, got back inside, looks like it's going to roll over. And what happened? Bang, right? We ran our high, right? High wick doji on the weekly, right? Ran that high on a big blow off move. And this is the sentiment, right? This is peak euphoria for Bitcoin maxis, right? This big high wave candle, but it mostly rejected, right? It mostly rejected just how it did here, right? So with the Bitcoin maxis and the way they're acting and the sentiment, this tells me we're at a sentiment high, technically and sentiment wise, right? And it could be similar to what we saw last cycle, right? And it's not crazy to think that, right? We're looking at almost the same thing, just in a smaller scale, basically. So I really do like this, the look of this weekly candle close we got on Bitcoin dominant, which is this candle. This is a high wave rejection, right? Mostly all wick. And these, if we see follow through, these weekly candles do have massive weight behind it. It's a weekly chart. This isn't like an hourly or 4-hour chart. This is a weekly chart. So these candlesticks hold a lot of weight, when you put in a candle such as this, right? So if there's ever a time for Bitcoin dominance to be topped with sentiment, with charts, right? Candlesticks, it's here, right? Whether we come back up a little higher, fill some wick, I'm looking for a top in Bitcoin dominance here, with everything kind of coming together. So we'll see if that plays out. Again, the candlestick is fine, but you need follow through. So that's something I'm going to be tracking as far as Bitcoin dominance is concerned, and kind of tracking it similarly to how we saw last cycle. All right. With that, let's look at ETH BTC, right? Because it's kind of almost the same chart, like Tommy always says, just in reverse, a little different, but so this is ETH BTC, right? And again, what are we seeing here on the weekly?
Despair.
Yep. Literally. Like this is a big candle, right? This is a big candle. And again, peak bearishness and sentiment on ETH, right? And that's what you see at the extremes of the market, whether it's the highs or whether it's the lows. You're always going to get that extreme sentiment, like people giving up or people victory lapping, right? And similar to Bitcoin dominance, ETH BTC, massive candle to the downside, mostly all wick, closes a doji. And again, this is another candle that, is sending signals that this could be a potential pivot point, right? And the big thing is what we do after this, right? So we could see some relief, and it kind of comes down to what happens in this area, right? Because this area, this red box, is a key area on the chart, right? Whether we get up here and reject, lose this low, shit, ETH is actually cooked. We're cooked, chat. We gotta do something, right? We gotta change our thinking. We have to change our thesis. But if we come up here and reclaim, right, get back inside this massive range, we have something to work with, right? And you can use this reclaim as a confirmation, right? If, let's say you sold somewhere in here and you're done taking chances, you're done taking risks. You want to see some concrete like data that's going to give you confirmation and be a little more safer with your entries. You wait to see how ETH, let me just get rid of some of these drawings because a lot. You wait to see how ETH reacts in this area, right? Because if we can get a reclaim and reclaim this level and we start to head back to the upside, this is just a massive deviation, drastic as it may seem, a massive deviation of our level. You get back inside. Confirmation is you hold this, you start to push. Okay, you want to enter, get back into ETH and alt here. That's fine as well, right? Because now we have confirmation back in the range, and you start to see a reversal. So, but putting this and Bitcoin dominance together, that's like kind of the sentiment, the peaks in sentiment in both directions, right? And I do like how it's matching up. Obviously, didn't want to see this, right? But it's kind of what it is right now. So that's kind of how I'm looking at, ETH BTC, Bitcoin dominance. And I'm not definitely counting out, ETH just yet, because that's kind of what the market wants you to do, right? So we will see, right? Like, I'm not going to be ignorant to the fact, like, again, if we start coming up here and start to roll over, okay, something's off. ETH is actually, there's something going on here bigger. Something's massively changed with crypto and ETH. And we have to reevaluate. But until we get, this level, right, and see what happens, we kind of have to wait and see. So if you're holding, you wait, right? You wait for this level. You wait for this level. If you're waiting to get back, you sold, you're waiting to get back in, you wait for the reaction at this level. So this is a level I'm watching. And similar with Bitcoin dominance as well. Like that, if this goes back inside, goes back to the upside, we'll see Bitcoin dominance starting to fall. And that was the blow off top for Bitcoin dominance. And this was the blow off bottom for ETH BTC. So that's kind of how I'm looking at it in a broader sense. Locally, not much, right? We have to wait and see. We really have to wait and see. As far as ETH goes, this is our ETH weekly chart. We talked about this in the Discord call, but 3K, like 28, 2,900, 3K for ETH is the level, right? That's a massive level on the chart. And I think if you're following the ETH USD pair, this is the area where you want to see price react and what's going to happen here, right? Again, on the weekly, on the USD, ETH USD pair, like look at this massive weekly doji candle to the downside, right? Buyers stepped in here. There were massive buyers that came in and scooped up this move. Who it is, we don't know. But if I had to guess, it's big money, big institutions that were waiting for cheap ETH to load up, let retail capitulate, get their positions, and go. So whether we come up into this level, reject, you can feel some of this wick. You see that all the time. Whether you come here, something like this, or we start to come up here, you reclaim 28, 2900. We start head to the upside. This level is your confirmation as well on the USD pair. So those are the key levels I'm watching, and I recommend everyone else watch to see, right? To not to be guessing or just buying a falling knife, right? You don't want to catch a falling knife. So that's kind of how I'm looking at it. But again, not counting out ETH just yet. And we're kind of in wait and see mode. So those are the key levels for me that I'm watching.
It was a great cook session, Louis. I like the take. When it comes to the ETH sentiment, right? I think like there is lots of people saying that the sentiment on ETH is bad, and I agree it is bad. But the thing is that it's been bad for a long while, and I feel like we had that peak bearish ETH sentiment already many times. We had that BTC maxis laughing at ETH for a long while, and we had already few capitulations there, and we had people deleting their .eth from their nicknames. The thing is that should have made the bottom on ETH. Like the way we saw BTC maxis delete their laser eyes during 2022 bear market. And that happened, and it actually meant the peak bearish sentiment. And it meant it didn't like bottom on day one when that happened, but it meant that the price pretty much bottomed over there and rotated up. But I feel like ETH already had all those events, right? And you will get people say like, oh, this is bad ETH sentiment. But like that's been there for a year. Everyone's been laughing at ETH for a year, right? Just because the sentiment is bad now doesn't going to reverse it, basically. I think it comes to what Tommy was saying. There needs to something fundamentally change. It's not about TA or sentiment right now.
Yeah, no, I would agree 100%, Jack. But the only counter argument I would have to that is if everyone watching, if they've been around for more than a year, this was Bitcoin back in middle of 2024, and I would argue that in this time period, if you were around, right, for all of this, Bitcoin sentiment was horrible as well, right? And we had multiple capitulation lows on Bitcoin where the sentiment was horrible, right? And we still kind of came out the other side, and we also had market structure breaks as well. So that's the only, valid points. But just to give a counter argument to that is, this is what accumulation looks like on a large scale. Like this is what big money accumulation looks like. It's major swings to the upside, to the downside, big wicks to the downside, like similar to that weekly ETH candle I just showed you. It looks a lot like this, right? Like look at this move that we had on Bitcoin, after post ETF. Like look at this major weekly wick to the downside, right? Eventually we kind of came back down and then worked our way out. But my argument would be that we had multiple shakeouts, right, and multiple bearish sentiment on Bitcoin, but that didn't mean that it was over, right? Eventually we did get out of it, and these major wicks or major capitulations and major cascades to the downside was where the big money was accumulating, right? Because if big money wasn't accumulating here, we wouldn't have bounced here, right? We wouldn't have big wicks. So that was my main argument to that point, but valid points nonetheless.
One more thing maybe to add to the ETH-BTC discussion. Like we had people who were very vocally bearish on ETH-BTC chart for a long time, and they were right. And then they said, hey, I'm bullish here. And still it went lower. So like we already went through the phase of like, hey, everyone's bearish ETH-BTC. Even the people who called for very low upside targets at that point and got it right, they went long and it still dropped way lower below those prices. And again, I think it comes to what Tommy was saying, is that I think like the chart needs to carve a bottom here, go sideways, accumulate, and fundamentally something probably needs to change to some degree. I do agree with Max as well that nothing saves the chart more than just the price pumping 100%, of course.
Yeah.
Suddenly it's going to be good tech again.
Yeah. No, I agree. And this is ETH on the daily here. And I mean, this daily candle is absolutely insane. What's the percentage move on this candle? 28%, mostly wick. So there definitely were buyers here, right? And one thing I want to point out is I'm not calling for this, right? But V-shaped recoveries and stuff like that. I wouldn't count that out just yet either. It makes a lot more sense. And 95% of the time, right? You'll put in a base, you'll fill this wick, you put in some reaccumulation, then you work your way out. Takes a couple months, and that happens, right? But the thing with V recoveries is when you're looking back at a chart and looking at a V recovery, it looks like it happened overnight, right? It looks like price wicked down, buyer stepped in, and it just shot back up. But if you actually look at an example of a V-shaped recovery, let's look at Bitcoin on the COVID drop, right? Which most would probably consider this a V-shaped recovery, right? The COVID drop. But, right, if you actually look at how long it took for this V-shaped recovery that goes down and straight up, if you actually take the timing from the wick low to kind of where, like, I would say, like, until we were here, right, like in this area, until we broke these highs, you're not really sure. But from the wick low to like kind of where it was like confirmed that we recovered out of this, that took 40 days. So a V-shaped recovery that people are like, oh, like we didn't V-shaped recovery, like now we have to stay down here for months. I would point to this example right here, which we just saw last cycle on Bitcoin, where we cascaded down, we grinded higher, slowly but surely. Everyone was probably waiting for something like this, right?
So
And
Louis, it's the can you do me zoom in on that example that you have right there, the COVID? Just zoom in a little bit. See the capitulation candle, the one that just like the trap door. Can you draw a horizontal line from the top of that candle?
Yeah.
So that's like, if we don't sell off here, which again, no one knows if we're going to or not, right? It's just a game of probabilities. And I would say there's a much higher chance that we actually do sell off at some point and backfill a little bit more of the wick, just based on what we've seen in the past 10 different examples, right? If you just look at like the past 10 nukes that ETH has had, or Bitcoin, more times than not, they'll take out the wick. But if you look at this example and then scroll over to where we are currently.
On ETH or Bitcoin?
I would say ETH. Yeah. Just because Bitcoin didn't even nuke here, right? It was literally just like, oh, trade war, let's pummel ETH and just ETH. So if you go to the top of the nuke candle, like, more like
here.
Yeah, I'd say right there. Yeah, like that one. If you can manage to just climb up there, then I think you would, even if it takes another 2, 3, 4 weeks, that would be kind of in line with like the COVID quote unquote V-shaped recovery, right? So if you climb all the way up there and you flip that level, then you probably don't come back down. But that's a big wall to climb, obviously. Don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves. But I agree with you. Like, you can't rule it out yet. A V
We're only 7
recovery
days
can,
in.
yeah.
I do agree with you guys that if we do climb above that level, I think we could V-shape recovery to some extent. I do view few arguments or different type of PA than the one in COVID, which I want you guys to see and maybe discuss. Because I was during COVID live, and when it happened, maybe you can put it side by side, is that we like first big difference to me is that we had the capitulation happen in August. I will still say this: we did not need a second capitulation to the same level. And the second big difference to me, like when it comes to PA, just buy it, right? Is that when we had the COVID one, I know it took more days, but the thing is that there was the drop, and it was immediately from the daily candle going up. It never was going lower. Versus right now, it had that big liquidation bounce, but then no follow through, and instead it's a slow bleed right after, which to me are two key differences. But I do think that if by some chance we were to come back to that level, it's very important to see that and acknowledge it. And I think it could very easily continue up. And the moment you reclaim 3.3K, I think we are so back.
Yeah. So this is what he's talking about here. Yeah. I mean, we basically grinded straight up, but we did have, came up, bang. We did have a nice big wick to the downside, and then it continued to climb.
It was the literal close of the down candle. So you like had a big down candle and then big hammer back up. You came back and retested the close of it, but you never traded below. Versus the difference I see right now is that you had the sell-off, you had the big liquidation bounce, but now you keep slow bleeding. Again, like minor change, but I do see that change. And I think if we were to come back to that, level that we have marked there, I think this scenario is likely to play out to some degree. I think it will, right? We have that largest East CME gap in history there, right through that level, right? It's right in the middle of it. That CME gap is getting filled. The question is only one.
And what happens when we get there? Like I was saying earlier, we can come up here, right? This is that 3K level I'm talking about. If we come up here and then start to do something like this, then we're kind of cooked. Maybe we come all the way back down to range lows, right? But if you come up to this level, fill it, flip this major level of 3K and start to build a base up here, we have a shot at something. Until then, we're kind of in no man's land, right? So it's kind of just wait and see. If you were lucky enough to sell a good amount of ETH or alts up in here, that's what I maybe dabble in here, get some low prices, but your confirmation is getting it back above 3K and then flipping it into support, right? That's kind of just goes back to what I was saying earlier in the show. So I would agree with you 100%. But just one thing I just wanted to touch on that, the V-shaped recovery does take longer than most people think. Like the wick low on ETH, like to where we are now, is only 7 days, right? And this took, before we actually started to break out, like a month and a half, 47 days, right? So although V recoveries, looking back in hindsight, look like it happened overnight, a V-shaped recovery does take, could take a month or so to play out. So I'm not betting on it, right? I'm not betting on it as my base case where I love for it to happen. Absolutely. But it's just something not to count out just yet.
Again, I suppose my main objection is still, if you're going to look at COVID, it rinsed all of those lows and went to a no man's land. Like that was the shakeout. That was single one. And you had a V-shaped recovery from it. I was scooping up the August one. I just do not see a reason why we had to come back to the exact same level once again. Like, why would you capitulate to the same level? Why would, if you were to do a capitulation, you wanted to rinse through it, through that level. Louis, you're muted. Sorry.
Yeah. Can you hear me? I agree. But what I would say is we kind of did that on Bitcoin, right? So this is a capitulatory low, ran all the lows, right? And guess what? We did it again, right? And then we started a recovery. So yes, I just as a pure analyst, technical analyst, of course, yes, you're 100% correct. But my argument is middle of the cycle, right? We had a capitulatory low here, came up, ran the lows again, like came up and then ran the lows again, came back to that level, if not ran through it, right? And this still was, a extremely predatory reaccumulation for Bitcoin that led to a almost, 70, 80% rally on Bitcoin. So, just a counter argument to that is like what you're saying is 100% true. Like your example is like, we had this on Bitcoin already. Why would we need to come back to the lows again? I don't know why, but we did. And we still managed to reaccumulate and go, right? And the similarities between Bitcoin and ETH is the ETF, right? It's the ETF. It's the big money, big institutions, big players coming in, buying the ETF product. And this is how, in my opinion, big money gets their entries, doing this over and over and over again, rinsing retail, rinsing all the local levels more than once, getting their positions. Everyone's capitulated. Everyone's out. They scooped up cheap Bitcoin or ETH, and then they let the market do its thing from there. So yes, I agree. But again, I'm looking example right now where we kind of had the same thing and, we reversed to the upside. So not saying it's guaranteed, right? Nothing's guaranteed, but just looking at data where we have done something similar and we still reaccumulated and rallied out of it. So
I think for me, I know we have that gap above us on ETH. The way I'm kind of viewing it is if the downside momentum is as strong as I currently think it is, and a few other people tend to think that it is, I don't think we should be filling that gap before lower prices, personally. I kind of feel like you just go for the kill shot now. I'm in agreement with Jackus. I don't really think that while it was a big wick, I think a lot of that had to do with weekend illiquidity. We haven't swept those lows to the same degree. And I think the best case, probably, like, I really don't think you're looking at a V recovery. I think you're looking at prolonged sideways here for the next few weeks to become a bull again. But it's a significant market structure break. We've been talking about how 3K ETH, that pivot point, was going to end up cooking a huge move in the market. And I'm not going to pretend like the downside move was completely expected. But once 3K was lost, I think the burden of proof is now back on, bulls to reclaim that level, to restore confidence, not just in ETH, but also altcoins and risk within the market, because we look at a lot of these charts and, they got hammered over the last few weeks. I think those charts need sideways. At V recovery would be great, but I think what makes more sense to me, given some of these high time frame market structure breaks that we have seen, is probably sideways at best. But I still think it's more favorable that we see lower prices before. I don't think it's a cyclical end. Let me be clear, because I don't want anybody to misquote me. But I do think that we can continue to see this.
People will misquote you anyway.
No.
they will just make up their, vision of the world, and they will just instill it on you. Like, doesn't matter what you do or what you'll say, they'll just ignore it and just say, no, in my world you were this, in my world you said this.
I know they will. But I think we're just seeing a mid-cycle correction on beta within crypto. I really think that's the case. We'll probably see I think Bitcoin's probably a bit of a lagging indicator here, because we do tend to sell alts first in order to keep Bitcoin above support. I'd love a Bitcoin kill shot to the downside so that the real death of volatility can begin, because I don't really consider this current price action to be a death of volatility. Certainly not. I mean, we still had 10 to 20% swings on altcoins basically every other day.
Have you checked the perpetual data, Tommy? Is it telling you something different, or like any extra info?
There was some options activity last week towards the end of the week that was betting on downside, but from a futures, it's a lot harder to discern directionality from open interest on things like Bitcoin and ETH, because those markets have gotten so large. Bitcoin global OI, I'm not quite sure what the number is right now, but for ETH, I hadn't looked in a few months, and it ballooned all the way up to like 30 billion, which is 150% of what Bitcoin topped at in 2021. So these are completely different open interest markets than we had in previous cycles, with a lot more like types of players. So I don't think that you can just view open interest as as explicitly as like it's primarily long, it's primarily short. What I will say, I posted this in our Discord a few weeks ago. It's pretty clear, because of how sticky the open interest on ETH has been, that we're cooking up a big move. So I think it's pretty pertinent that the bulls take back 3K, or the beatings can continue. But that's not to say that there aren't a huge amount of shorts on ETH right now, because there are. And that doesn't mean that it's going to be one of those things that immediately squeezes back up. Eventually, in time, if you're going to grind back up towards those range highs, towards that 4K level, again, I think you're going to punch those shorts, right? Because you've already basically flushed out all of the longs within the past, most of them, right? Within this range. We haven't swept the low, but I don't have quite as much edge deciphering open interest on Bitcoin and ETH as I used to, but I do know the open interest on ETH has been very sticky. And this past dump, although it punched a lot of it out, I still think there's a lot of open interest that can come off in both directions. So that's basically my way of not really answering your question. I'm sorry, but there's a lot of OI on ETH. It's been a huge question of mine whether or not it's primarily long, primarily short. But I just lean into.
I'm getting a lot of background noise from somebody. I'm not sure who that is.
Yeah, I'm picking it up as well.
Yeah,
I lean into. I feel like you should lean into the side that's currently being punished, right? Because they're the ones who are probably more on defense than offense right now.
I feel like there is lots of people who were bearish the entire way up from 2022, like seriously bearish all the way through to the upside. And this is like the first time they are getting bullish, but they are not acknowledging the things you and I discussed, I would say. And so I think they are getting like that perfect entry after being wrong for 2 years. But to me, it's simply right now, in my opinion, I still think it's like, I don't know, like from my point of view, I just need to see prices reclaiming levels. I suppose that's my end quote. To me, it feels like buying the breakdown and justifying it that sentiment is bad.
I agree. I think contextually, I need to see the trend weaken to the downside. Right now, it feels like we just broke out potentially of a consolidation that looked like it was getting ripe to break out, right? But we did break down from that 3K level. We've got a ton of open interest that was tacked on in the weeks that led up to that event. Again, contextually, I don't think you should fill that gap before lower prices. If you were to, I think that's actually a really big positive for the market, because even if you do end up trading back into the wick after you were to fill that CME gap, to me, it's a sign that the trend is not as strong to the downside as it could be.
I still think we get some bigger bounces coming in into the next week, probably.
How do you guys feel about like where equities are sitting? Like S&P sitting just below all-time highs, NASDAQ just below all-time highs, IWM still holding market structure. Are you guys taking any signal from that as a market whole?
I think, S&P just can't get over 6,100. I think many people are assuming that this volatility regime is the same as last year, and assuming that bull is going to break down when, you look at the VIX futures curve has continued to form a base for the last few weeks. I think it's loading a higher move. It just hasn't really had the right catalyst to be able to do it. But again, if volatility for whatever reason does break down here, then you can definitely get that push on the S&P. But for now, 6,100 is capping price, and that push-pull relationship, I think, between the S&P and volatility is going to continue.
Yeah, I obviously, like it's kind of a mixed, right? You have you could even say, I would even agree with Max that the East bearish sentiment is overcrowded, right? The thing is, you also have the overcrowded trade, which is bullish on equities. Like everyone's bullish SPX right now, and no one was bullish when I was absolutely bull to the tits. Lots of us were 2022, 2023. When I was calling for new highs, everyone was calling for the largest recession. Now the price has been greening up for the past year, and I'm still not one of those guys that would call for like the biggest recession ever. Mostly those same guys are flipping pretty bulled up right now, the same ones. But we do see, in my opinion, SPX sort of like slowing down here, which isn't a bad thing. I think it sort of like ranges here for some time, but a little, a little move down here, what does it do to crypto, right? Like, you literally need SPX to keep grinding higher and higher, just so that ETH can go with it, right? Pretty much.
Yeah, I agree. I think the flipping 6,100 for the S&P is probably confluent with a lot of these majors flipping levels that they obviously have to reclaim before higher prices. So I think that confluence is useful. But I'm going to keep pointing out, I think if you look at Vol, it's clearly found a floor. People are looking for it to nuke through that floor, despite the fact that we've talked before about this. The volatility skew until June is trending up. So every time that we dip down below the skew, you're more likely to see that buyback than you were last year on Vol, on hedges, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, it's not, people aren't just seeing the VIX and saying, oh, it's at support, so I'm going to buy. It's obviously a derivative of kind of participant behavior around the pricing of other much more complex financial derivatives. But yeah, I mean, it's like equities are at this point where it's like you said, Jack, is they've kind of slowed down a little bit. Are they just going to range? They can just, I mean, they could dump and continue to range, realistically speaking. What does that do to crypto? I guess we'll just have to see. But I'm not leaning that equities are forming some like long-term rounded top. I have been saying for a while, I think it's much more likely that you see a pullback in equities that leads to some sort of Fed put, Trump put, whatever you want to call it. Maybe that's 5% lower. Maybe that's 10% lower. I do think that's where we're headed at some point. They're going to want to keep the equities Ponzi going. And I do think that they'll probably do that through printing. And I think until that happens, I think 6,100 is going to continue to cap the S&P, barring some pretty extreme headline. Maybe it's from the Treasury. I don't know. I know a lot of people have been saying reverse repo could be the cause of that. I don't know if that's something that steers the ship in the right direction in like the first week that it happens. But generally speaking, I do think that there are still liquidity tailwinds coming our way for the S&P and equities this cycle. I do think that will probably lead to the S&P going up with volatility, but I don't know if I think the conditions for that are in place right at this moment.
Yeah.
I just can't be bearish equities here yet. And here's the thing is like
I'm not bearish equities either.
I know this is kind of a meme
Range.
but with equities, I think it holds a little bit more true. I think it pays to be late to the equity shift of trend than to be early, because there's not a lot of vehicles that are even that efficient in shorting it because it's such a Ponzi that I think you have to look at something like the S&P. I'm not talking about individual names. I'm talking about like the baskets, the S&P, the NASDAQ, the Russell, the Dow, whatever. They take like 6 months to actually roll over and pick up momentum to the downside. Even if you call the Pico top on equities, there's no point in positioning for downside until like 4 months into a complacency, right? So I think we all understand like when equities show weakness and start to roll over, but not actually roll over yet, crypto gets hammered. So obviously crypto would get punished. But in terms of actually speculating on equity downside, there's no point here. There's no point unless you think it's going to be a COVID trapdoor, which I think it's also a bit silly to think that you could call that. I mean, maybe somebody will, but more likely than not, if you do get equity downside and you get a year of, chop and downside in equities, you're going to have to be really, really, really specific in how you try to play that, because even if you call the top, you're going to end up getting burned out of your options or whatever you decide to do, or you're going to get contangoed out of your, what is it? SQQQ. What's the inverse one? Is it S or T?
I think it's S. Oh, actually, yeah, I think it is S.
Yeah. So you're going to get contangoed out of your SQQQ play because it bleeds and it's like an option, right? It's basically an option. So it's like, I really would just advocate like patience, even if you think equities are going to pull back here. It's like, there's no good way to position in it, not lucratively. You could buy some 2-year out options, but what are you going to hit a 2x if it plays eventually? And you're going to have to sit through 6 months of up, down, banker bounce,
I do agree with Max. Like the positioning for the short side here for equities isn't. I suppose on my side, someone has different strategy and he can nail the top. But from my point of view, it's more like you take partial profits on the way up, and then I think this is a good time. And if the dip comes, you have ammunition to rebuy. But it's not like calling for a big bear market, right? It's more like I would say that if equities, if SPX were to drop, it will just drop few hundred points basically. But obviously, if that happens, you would have another, and it's really like you need to differentiate BTC and the rest of it. But I find it hard that you would have a SPX dropping and crypto rising, and so we basically just need SPX to continuously go higher here, which not saying is not possible. But what I would rather love is that maybe like SPX drops a little and then we can see strengths coming in from crypto itself rather than being dragged up by SPX.
Yeah. I don't mind that.
I really think the catalyst for crypto to decouple from equities is going to be centered around printing of money.
Basically.
Sovereign storage of value. I think they're going to be like inherently tethered together at some point, right? The S&P moving higher because of money printing, but at the same time, that's exactly the catalyst that's going to spur on, more purchasing of crypto. There's nothing that's more that spurs like movement more than fear. And I think 2020 to 2021 was a great example of that. One of the biggest narratives around Bitcoin and around crypto accelerating during COVID was because of all the financial printing, right? It was viewed as an inflation hedge, which ironically is still kind of how people are viewing Bitcoin, at least right now. I think crypto will be viewed in the same way, maybe not quite as, cleanly as Bitcoin, but we've seen the same dynamic already play out. Oh, you're printing money? Well, Bitcoin's scarce. A lot of cryptocurrencies are also scarce. I don't want to hold these dollars. I want to hold something else. I do think that's ultimately where crypto will likely decouple from a performance standpoint from equity markets.
Indeed.
Yeah, I agree with you. Well, I think that takes us into the end of the show. Tommy, do us the honors.
I shall. Thank you guys. What does the like button look like, by the way? We haven't bugged you. So I'm going to assume that you guys have hit the like button, even though I'm actually kind of assuming that you probably haven't. But if you have, thank you for doing that. If you enjoyed the show today, maybe you're interested in a little more alpha from any of the panelists on today's show, guys, we do have a way for you to join the family through a few different proxies, right? Starting with our premium Discord, if you want 4 to 5 hours of daily calls with our analysts, and then some. I mean, we give our intimate thoughts on the market as things are happening. And of course, also sometimes even our positioning. So make sure to check that out in the Because Bitcoin Discord. It can be your go-to source of alpha for this cycle. Of course, what maybe you might be looking for your go-to tool, to kind of navigate, whether it's lower time frames, whether it's higher time frames, or maybe even on chain. Check out the BB Terminal, guys. There is a utility for all of you through BB Terminal, right? Whether, like I said, whether you're a lower time frame active trader, open interest, derivatives, whether you are a long-term investor looking to use data to kind of drive some long-term investment decisions. And of course, soon for our on-chain trench warriors, whatever you want to call yourselves, we'll soon have a tab for you on the BB Terminal as well. So make sure to check out the BB Terminal at these prices while you still can, guys, because as we continue to add functionality to it, I guarantee you the price has a pretty good shot of going up. So take advantage of these products at these prices while you still can. We were nice enough to bundle them together for you. If you're looking for, honing your educational base or even reaching trading level mastery, we've got a course for you as well. So check out BB Academy. Come learn from the entire Because Bitcoin team. All of our different styles, and we have, as I always say, we have very different approaches to the market as a team. I really think that's where the value of the course lies. So check that out. But maybe the downside volatility for the last few weeks has been too much to stomach, and maybe picking winners in this market has been too difficult, because after all, both of those things have been demonstrably very difficult over the course of the last year. Well, we have a solution for you as well, and that is through our SEC registered hedge fund, BB Wealth Management. So come check that out as well if you're interested in having the team manage capital for you. And everything that I've just mentioned is linked in the description below. Lastly, for BB Wealth Management, guys, a reminder that we trade digital assets in a way that looks to capture their asymmetric history for upside returns while also balancing the downside risk posed in any financial market. But that's it from us. We hope that you enjoyed Monday's show of Market Check. We will be back for another episode tomorrow, same time as always, 11 a.m. Eastern Standard, whenever the New York Stock Exchange is open. But certainly do not forget King Wabi's show, Market Talk, which is an X space hosted through our Because Bitcoin account as well as Wabi's account. So make sure to stay following and subscribe to both of them so you can be notified not just when we schedule those spaces, but of course also when we go live. Thank you guys, as always, for tuning in. I don't know what the like button looks like. I hope that you are hitting it for us. But regardless, we'll be back here tomorrow to cook again for you all, nevertheless. Thank you again, guys. As always, stay safe. Have a great rest of your day.
See ya.